Hey all, Alex from Music Hub here, and today we'll be talking about the 2012 biography by Nicholas Roe, John Keats. John Keats, born the 31st of October 1795 in London, died the 23rd of February 1821 in Rome. A medical student initially, Keats ended up devoting his life to poetry, joining the cohort of English romantics that included Lord Byron and both Percy and Mary Shelley. While he was alive, Keats was a popular poet amongst his contemporaries, but it wasn't until after his death from tuberculosis at age 25 that Keats's work became hailed as some of the greatest poetry of the era. And for what it's worth, I would probably rate Keats as my favorite of the English romantics so far. I think the intensity he writes with is less of a fire and brimstone intellectual passion that you see driving the works of Shelley and Byron, and one that's more of longing. Keats feels more grounded to me. His feelings are more relatable, and goodness knows his imagery is just gorgeous. This book is written by Nicholas Hugh Roe, born the 14th of December 1955 in Fareham, Hampshire. The professor of English literature at the University of St. Andrews, Roe specializes in English Romanticism, and in fact this is his third book on Keats alone. Unlike the previous two books, though, 1995's Keats in History and 1997's John Keats and the Culture of Dissent, this is a proper biography meant as a popular history rather than an academic one. And good on him for trying to aim this book toward a more populist crowd. It seems to have paid off for him, given that this is now heralded as the new definitive Keats biography. And indeed, there's not much to complain about. It's as well researched as one can expect from someone who's spent his entire career intimate with Keats and his work. And the benefit to this is that Keats isn't the only one who jumps off the page as a result of that research. His friends do, and his other contemporaries do too, perhaps none more so than his fiancée, Fanny Braun, who's sort of an obliviously tragic figure in this whole endeavor. Not oblivious because of her own shortcomings, mind. I'm not calling her stupid, but because Keats kept her in the dark very intentionally about his failing health over the last few years of his life, so she didn't know the truth about his illness until after he was already dead. The part in the kind of epilogue of the book where she is told of Keats's passing, it's not a super emotional moment, but it is a bit of a gut punch just because of how stoically and reservedly she seems to take the news, so it almost makes it sadder in its own way. I like how the author also dispels some notions about Keats himself. He's not as firm and forthright about it as Richard Holmes was in his Percy Shelley biography, but Keats turns from this fragile figure of weakness into this relatively scrappy person who's hardened by his rough upbringing, and he's never quite able to move on from that part of his life. It makes him more complex than the popular narrative of young romantic talent gone far too soon would have you believe. I only have one critique of this book, and it plays into a major pet peeve I have with a lot of nonfiction writing, using questions to transition into news sections. And I know that sounds nitpicky, but bear with me. Roe does this a lot, at least early on in the book. He will ask questions along the lines of, now that Keats had a hold of this information, what would he do with it? Or what would Keats do next? Or how would this go for Keats? Questions like this. They get the job done, but I've always found it kind of a clunky way of writing something you might see in like a high school paper or a freshman college essay or something. Maybe it's a trivial point, and I respect that this is probably in part a symptom of Roe adjusting his writing style for mainstream audiences, but I did notice it enough to where it dropped the quality of the book's writing a notch in my estimation, enough to turn it from a fantastically done biography into merely a really, really good one. But that said, your mileage may vary. There's a lot to like here, and if you're wanting to get a lengthy picture of the abbreviated life of John Keats, you probably won't find a better one, and certainly not one that was written this recently. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, more reviews are to come. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on Music Hub.